Okay, it is 12:15, and we are going to go over the booklet that Carr gives you as the materials for the Code of Ethics test. And then we're gonna, and then you'll be a little more familiar as you go through it, what you need to have in front of you and what you don't. So just so you know, so the way the test is up, there's one booklet. It's divided into 5 sections. So there are 5 quizzes of 5 questions each that are untimed. So you can look at the quizzes and you can decide if you need to go back and look at the materials or not. And then there's a final exam that's 15 questions that, and I'm not giving this test. You take this on Carr after you're familiar with the materials. So, and then there's a 15 question final that is timed that you have 15 minutes for. In mine, I don't know, I assume all the finals are a little different. They don't let you copy it in any way. And on mine, it didn't really have a lot of the quiz questions on it, which I thought was interesting. Usually it's kind of a mix of the quiz questions, but it had a bunch of other stuff. So you kind of need to know, and you need, and a lot of the stuff you can't memorize, so you kind of need to know what to have in front of you. Okay, so I am going to put this up on my screen. Not this one, not this one. One of these. Okay, this one. And we are going to do this share screen. Okay. So segment 1 is about the standard of ethics. And I can tell you, I don't know if this is cheating or not cheating. I have no idea, but I did save my quizzes. So I can tell you which questions from this chapter are on the quiz. But I don't actually remember all the final exam stuff, but let's just go through this. Okay. Our ethical standards come from the National Association of Realtors, who puts out the Code of Ethics, and also government laws and agencies, right? We all know that. We are largely self-governed, but not 100%. I mean, clearly, if someone has a beef against you, they don't have to go to the National Association of Realtors. They can go to a court. Okay. Federal and state legislation. Okay, fair housing. So you have to be aware that there are a bunch of different fair housing laws. No one, I mean, I don't think anyone can memorize this. These ones where they give you like these lists, sometimes I like to just copy those and have them ready to look at if I need them. Even in a final exam where they're timing you, if you have a list out somewhere of like all of this or all of that, you'll be able to see it. Because who could remember all of these if they ask a question about one of those? Not protected. I'm just trying to see if there's a question on here. No, there is not. Okay. I want to go back up here for just 1 second because there's a question. The following most important sources. So the sources, the most important sources of rules and regulations are the California Business and Professions Code, the Department of Real Estate Commissioner regulations. Those are mostly what we do. There is also something called, I'll see it in here right away. There's something called dictum, which is the how it was done before. You know, if something is, that's like if there's a case and then we all follow that case is dictum. But in this case, ancient dictum, anything that's old, that is not what we follow. So keep that in mind, because that is one of the questions I had, was that the ethical standards of contract that we must follow arise out of all of the following except standards set by industry professional organizations. So let's just say you didn't know the answer to this question. That's one. You know that's right, right? Clearly, government statutes, clearly they set regulations. Administrative rules provided by the governing state real estate agency, clearly they set rules. So the fourth one is ancient dictum. So that would mean following what it was done in ancient times. Clearly you would know that is the one we don't have, right? So just be aware that is one of my questions. So you should keep a kind of a list of that. Okay. Again, as a whole, federal housing laws protects only 7 classes. Okay, again, something you might want to keep handy. One of the questions on the quiz was, Which of the following classes is not protected under federal fair housing laws? So if you need to know, are you going to memorize these 7? Because California has a billion more, and there's, all kinds of ones. Have the list ready so that when they ask a question about the protected classes under federal, you'll know, you'll have them right there for you, because that will probably be a question both on a quiz and on a final. Okay. Okay, all the fair housing laws make available, you guys, we don't need to go over the fair housing laws and what they say, because this stuff, but you need to be prepared, because California again has different than federal. You need to be prepared with those classes in front of you. So I don't know that you need to print out this whole booklet, but there might be certain pages. I'm not even sure if you're allowed to print out the booklet. But you are allowed to keep it on your computer. So there might be certain pages that you have to be able to go back to. Okay. Laws. California has enacted laws and developed regulations that parallel the federal. So just because there's a federal Civil Rights Act doesn't mean we don't have a California Civil Rights Act. So these are the California acts that we deal with that prevent discrimination. The UNRU, Civil Rights Act, all arbitrary discrimination by businesses. The Rumford Act, also known as the California Fair Employment and Housing Act, protects age, race, sex. Look at, and we have, all of these. It further protects discrimination in the sale, rental, lease, and financing of virtually all types of housing. So that's the Rumford Act. I don't know that they ask about these necessarily by name. The Department of Real Estate Regulations also says that you can't discriminate based on all of these. And notice they all are a little different. They don't know, none of these lists are the same. So you kind of need to keep in your mind that they're different and that you need to know the differences. Not for lifetime, but for this quiz, for the test. Holden Act prevents discrimination in financing. So that's the one that does financing. Okay. Under federal and California law, persons with these characteristics or belonging to these classes are protected from legal discrimination in housing. And here they are, all 24 of them. Okay, so this list is federal and California law. Persons with these characteristics are protected from illegal discrimination in housing. So these are the illegal discrimination, and some are only California. They put both together, I think. But so be careful when you look at your list. If you have your different lists, be careful which one you're looking at. Okay. Okay, so we're still on segment 1. Conduct and restraint. I found this to be the shortest segment, so it seems to be going on and on. Okay, so this talks about antitrust, the Sherman Antitrust Act, which you just should have a general idea that it was an act that stopped people from getting together and making pricing, all of the toothpaste companies in the country can't, or in the world maybe can't have a little meeting and get together and decide they're all going to raise their prices by $3 a tube. They can't, that's the antitrust legislation. You can't get together and do these things. Okay. Disclosure of loan costs in obtaining financing and closing a transaction. Okay. So California passed the Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act, which is RESPA, which you all should be aware of. And in RESPA, there's certain things that you can't do. You can't have kickbacks. You can't have undisclosed fees. Okay, so RESPA is the one that makes it so that all of the title companies can't help us out anymore like they used to. We used to get presents, we used to get gifts, we got all kinds of things, right? We don't get those anymore because under the Settlement Procedures Act, you can't give those kinds of things. It also says under the RESPA, well, we don't need this for this class, never mind. Okay. So Code of Ethics, state laws, you can see they intersect, although there are more Code of Ethics than there are state laws on housing. Okay. The primary mission of the DRE, you should know this or at least have this in your mind because this looks like a real simple question, is the protection of the public in real estate transactions. So the major concerns: misrepresentation, failure to disclose, trust funds, and conflicts of interest. These are the things the DRE looks over. Okay, anything other than that usually goes to a board and to ethics to become ethics, but these are the DRE's big choices. Okay. And you should know those, or you should at least have some thing. So if you see a list of 4, you'll know which one doesn't belong there or which one does belong there. I'm trying to see if that was one of the questions on quiz 1. Yes. The very first question, which of the following is an area of concern that has given rise to state laws being passed to protect the public from unscrupulous agents? Okay, the choices are tax evasion. Okay, no, we don't have a law about agents and tax evasion. Failure to communicate in a timely manner, non-disclosure of material facts, and tardiness and missed appointments. So which one of those is the following is an area of concern that given rise to new laws? And that would be non-disclosure of material facts. Okay, failure to disclose material facts. That's one of the major areas that we've had to have a lot of rules and laws about, and including to trust funds and misrepresentation, which is kind of like the same thing as failure to disclose. Okay.
Cindy,
Yes.
a question. I got a question before and the chapter before where he said that we cannot discriminate and discrimination. What is it about registered sex offenders when you are trying to get a renter or you want to sell? Is that a problem with that?
Well, obviously there's a website for that, but you are not allowed to discriminate because someone's a registered sex offender. That was on that list. Let's go back up there. Did you see it on this list?
No, I just asking you because
oh, I thought you saw it on the list. Yeah. Well, we always disclose that there's, the car, I think the agreement itself discloses that there's a list of registered sex offenders online. So all you have to do is put in your address and it'll tell you everybody in your neighborhood, right? So yeah. They're obviously not a protected class then, because they couldn't be if we tell people who they are, right?
Right.
We certainly wouldn't tell the buyers of all the people on your block that are Black or Latino or Jewish. You wouldn't do that, right?
No.
So they are not a protected class, and someone can say, hey, I want to buy this property because there's, I have 5 kids and there's like 12 sex offenders on the street alone. So yeah, that we give a list from, the same thing. So I don't think they are protected. Okay, do we finish this section? Okay, so we did that. Professional organizations are there for advertising, for the MLS, and violations, conflicts of interest between its members. Those are the kinds of things that they monitor. Okay, ethical conduct with respect to clients. In order to organize a discussion of ethical conduct, the course will follow. Okay, so these are the next 3 sections. Ethical conduct with respect to clients and customers, with respect to the general public, and with respect to realtors. Okay, so that's the first section. And again, I found it to be the easiest of the sections. Let me look at what questions we didn't. Treating clients in a fair and ethical manner. A, can result in fines and penalties. B, will guarantee a loss of commission payments. C, helps prevent litigation and leads to referrals. D, does not affect the overall success of a licensee. Clearly, you don't even need to know anything to answer that one, right? Because 3 of them are ridiculous. Treating clients in a fair and ethical manner is not going to result in fines and penalties. It's not going to guarantee a loss of commission payments. And it's not going to affect the overall success of your overall success if you're treating them in a fair and ethical manner. But it does help prevent litigation and leads to referrals. So that was one of my. I assume the quizzes come out different every time. Okay, which of the following classes is not protected under federal fair housing laws? Federal fair housing laws: veteran status, familial status, handicap, or country of origin. That's a tough question because all of these are things we know, but only California protects veteran status, not federal. And you'd have to go back and look at that first little short list to know that veteran's not on the federal. Okay, Which of the following sources are the basis for the ethical standards of conduct that all real estate licensees must adhere to? The US government, local multiple listing service policies, professional organizations and governmental agencies, mortgage loan lenders, local county offices, state tax law. So the question is, which of the following are the basis for the, I probably could put this up. Oh, no, you can't see these. Which of the following is the basis for the ethical standards of conduct? So again, if you look at the questions, the US government is not the basis for the ethical standards. Local multiple listing services is not the basis for our ethics. They have their own rules, but not for our ethics. Professional organizations and government agencies are where we get our local ethics rules. Mortgage lenders, mortgage loan lenders, and county offices, clearly not. So 3 of these you could probably should be able to, eliminate without even thinking and find out and figure out what the 4th one is. Okay, so those were the quizzes in section 1. Yeah, I know I have lawyers. Okay, section 2 is ethical conduct to duties imposed. Wait, the realtors are going to impose whether a person promote the interest of the client. Duties to promote the interest of the client. Okay, and we all know with the highest standard of conduct required is the fiduciary duties, which we have. There is nothing higher than that. It means that I'm going to act for the client as if I were acting for myself. And if I'm sloppy with myself like I am, if you are sloppy with yourself like you are, like I am, then you still have to do a better job for in your fiduciary duties. Okay. So the this next group examines the relationship between a licensee and a client. Okay. And it's Realtor Standard of Practice 1.2. Client is the person with who you have a relationship. We know that. This is just the definition. We know what that is. Okay. Ethical conduct. Okay, the Code of Ethics Standard of Practice 1.2 defines a client and defines the relationship. That's what we just looked at. Okay, it can be created in 3 ways, and you should know these: by express, written, or implied agreement. So it can be a written agreement, it could be a verbal agreement. Okay, so we could have an arrangement. We say that there are no verbal agreements in real estate, but they say as evidenced by the parties' words and conduct. So basically they did everything but sign the agreement. I don't want to go down that road. This is the law, but we never want to have to prove that it was oral. I mean, it's not, it makes it sound like, here, oh, by facts and circumstances. Yeah, well, it's harder than that. And it's very difficult to prove an oral agreement. Okay, by the principal's ratification of an agent's previously unauthorized act. So I'm not sure of an agent example, but the law school example is if by ratification of an authorized act. If I go to you and I say, I'm going to paint your house if you'll give me $200, and I paint your and you kind of nod and I paint your house and I say, well, I didn't really authorize that, but I ratified it because I said I love the painting, I think it's great, I want to keep it, and then I got to pay. I'm not sure a real estate one where you would do something for them that was unauthorized. And then I guess if you found a buyer and you put them in escrow and they wasn't previously authorized, but they ratified it by signing the purchase agreement, that could be that we have, that could be some sort of a ratification of the listing. But again, these might make legal agreements, but they're tough to prove. And they're definitely not, no one's going to agree with you by settlement. You're going to have to go and you're going to have to prove the stuff. So we always want express, right? Or by estoppel.
Cindy,
Yes.
when you go to the grievance committee for a procuring costs and an agent that is representing a client and then end up buying with another agent, and then the agent is trying to claim, some part of the commission.
Right.
Just by, let's say that you wrote some offers on another property with them, that is like a verbal agreement. It's showing I was working with them. Right, you're talking about verbal agreement.
All of that works here, right? And that's what they're trying to say is, if you can show by something other than a simple signature. But basically, when you go to the other side and you say no, I have an implied verbal agreement in which they have ratified by doing X, Y, and Z, the other people are going to say pound sand. There is no, you have this and maybe you have, those are things you're going to have to prove in a court. Nobody's going to buy them just because you say them. And that's why we don't really like to do it that way. But yes, could we do it that way? If we had to, we could. Okay. Difference between, they make a big difference between a customer and a client. Okay. And you should know that the client is someone that signed something and is in a relationship with us, because we have an agency relationship. A customer is just someone who receives information from a licensee, but no contractual relationship. And I don't know, I believe in my question 2, there was a question about that somewhere, either in the final or the quiz, about the difference between a client and a customer. So you do need to know that. Okay, I don't care about historic notes. I just want to get this, pass my test, right? Defines a prospect as, okay, the Code of Ethics defines a prospect as a purchaser, seller, tenant, or landlord who is not subject to an agreement with a licensee. So they have no, they're not in contract with anyone, they're a prospect. So that's a prospect. A customer is someone who you send information to that you hope to have a relationship with, but don't. And a client is someone that you have a relationship with. So you should know those because that's probably going to come up. Okay. The fiduciary duty is applicable whether licensees are acting as an agent or in a legally recognized non-agency capacity. So if you somehow jump in and do something for someone where you don't have an agency capacity, but you do it, you're still supposed to do it with a fiduciary duty to the highest degree. Okay. Okay, and again, they go through a client, they go through this again right here so that they're sure you got it. It's the summary. Okay. Major areas of concern. Major ethical concerns between agent and client: misrepresentation, non-disclosure, conflict of interest. Okay, and you all know what these are. Misrepresentation is if you actually say something that's wrong. Non-disclosure, as far as I'm concerned, is a part of misrepresentation. It is not saying something you know to be material and should be disclosed. And conflict of interest is when the agent has a conflict of interest with the client. The agent owns the property, so you have to disclose it. The agent is related to someone. Those are conflicts of interest that have to be disclosed. And they say the same thing. Misrepresentation can also be non-disclosure or a conflict of interest. Right. Obviously, if you don't tell people, it's all kind of the same thing. All through a cause misrepresentation. Okay, obviously. Okay, so you need to know what those are. Misrepresentation. Define misrepresentation as knowingly making a false statement upon which another may rely to their detriment. That's a misrepresentation. It has to be knowingly. They do have something in the law called negligent misrepresentations, where you make one and you didn't know it was wrong, but you should have. You should have done your research. You should have, you can't just close your eyes and say, well, I don't know. So that's negligent misrepresentation. And there is also that. There's also a lawsuit for that. Okay. The section will address misrepresentation following the basic outline of the Code of Ethics. Okay, which is: the code prohibits making a substantial misrepresentation, obviously, making a false promise of a character likely to influence, persuade, or induce. Okay, so you can't say, yes, we're, I think the seller is planning on leaving all the patio furniture and the kitchen table and the dining room table. But you don't know that they are. You just say that, and you know that orally you saying it doesn't mean anything. So you say it if you make a false promise to try to influence them. You can't do that. A continued and flagrant course of misrepresentation or making false promises through real estate agents or salesmen. A continued or flagrant course of misrepresentation, which would be where you misrepresent something in the beginning of a transaction, and you just keep doing it throughout the transaction, and it turns out it was never true. Okay, conduct which constitutes fraud or dishonest dealings, okay, whether the same or a different character than specified in this section. Obviously, misrepresentations are fraud. If you make a misrepresentation to induce somebody to do something, that's called fraud. It's also a dishonest dealing. So, but they're saying that fraud and dishonest dealings may encompass even more than misrepresentations or false promises. Okay. Misrepresentations can rise to the level of fraud. Yeah, that's what I already said, because fraud is the suggestion as a fact of which is not true by one who does not believe it to be true. So you make a statement as a fact which you know is not true. Okay, the positive assertion in a manner not warranted. So this is kind of the negligent. You make a positive assertion and it's not warranted by the information you have. So I don't know if the seller's leaving anything, but I say, I think I might be able to get the seller to leave their patio furniture. Well, it's not warranted because you have no information from the seller at all that says that I might want to leave that. So that's kind of a negligent misrepresentation. You don't really know enough to even have made the statement. Okay.
Hey, Cindy, but if you work with a client and said, if you buy this house now, in about 6 months, it's going to be worth $50,000 more. Or, you know, when you project about rates and when you project about equity,
right.
Those are
Sometimes,
representation.
right. Sometimes that's puffing. Okay. And they do make a big difference between puffing and I think we're going to get to that, but between puffing and representation. And so, yes, maybe if you gave them an exact number, but if you said, I think, you know, given the market, if it stays the same way, your property is going to be worth, you know, 30,000 more in 6 months or 50,000 or whatever it is, or you say your property is going to be worth 700 in 3 months, you know, that's a lot more specific than saying your property is going to be worth, you know, $20,000 to $30,000 more if the market stays the same as it is now. So that's not a wrong fact because the market's gone up in the last 6 months by that kind of money. We know it's probably not going to go up in the next 6 months by the same thing, right? But if it did, right, then your property would be worth more. I mean, you just have to make sure that you're not making it sound like a fact versus, well, if everything continues, then that's not a fact. That's just your opinion, okay? And it never hurts to say in my opinion either. A promise made without the intention of performing it, obviously that's fraud. Okay, or anything you do to deceive someone, that's fraud. Okay, then it defines fraud, any breach of duty without an actual fraudulent intent, but you gain an advantage to the person, okay, by misleading them to their prejudice. So again, you gain an advantage. If you say, well, I think I might be able to talk the seller into this or that, okay, without actual, so I don't have any fraudulent intent because I think that in order to make the sale, I'm going to try to talk the seller into that, right? So I'm not saying it with fraudulent intent, but I gained an advantage, okay, by misleading this person to their prejudice. So I misled him to think that I had a good reason to believe the seller would do this. And, you know, so they're like, oh, okay, let's go. And then the seller says no. So again, this is still constructive fraud. It doesn't matter that you didn't have an intent to fraud. You didn't intend to mislead them, but you did, okay? If any act or omission as the law specifies declares to be fraudulent without respect to actual fraud. So, right, you know, that's like I know it when I see it, right? A constructive fraud. It's not real fraud per definition, but you've done this and this, and it just looks like fraud. So be really careful with, you know, with that, and you should be aware of that. Okay, I keep forgetting I'm teaching to the test. Okay. Right. Unethical conduct must also arise out of the negligent acts of a licensee. Based on negligence, there is a concept that a licensee can be held for not exercising ordinary care and skill. So, right. So I make a representation without going back and doing the research first. That's this negligent representation. Well, okay. California code defines negligence as, oh gosh, you're not going to need to know the definition of negligence, but everyone is responsible not only for the result of their own willful acts, but also for an injury occasioned by another by your want of ordinary care or skill in the management of your property or person. Okay, so if you, as an agent, obviously, if you don't use ordinary skill, and we have more than ordinary skill, we are required to have a fiduciary duty, then we could have negligent misrepresentation, we could have a negligent anything. Okay, so then they define, I think they always tell you at the end what they want you to take out of this. Misrepresentation is knowingly making a false statement upon which another may rely to their detriment. So I told you something to get you to do this, and you did it, and it wasn't true. Okay, Non-disclosure, you guys know what non-disclosure is. Non-disclosure is when you don't give a material fact, okay? It's a fact, and you guys know what material facts are. They're anything that an offering party would not have entered into the contract or would have offered to pay less money if they had known it, okay? So if you don't allege that, if you don't disclose that your swimming pool has a leak and it's losing water, okay, and every time they come, you fill it up and so they can't tell and you don't disclose it, okay, would that fact be material? Maybe they wouldn't have not entered into the contract, but they might have found out how much it cost to repair it and wanted to pay less for it. So those things you have, those are undisclosed things. And I think this is the case that, and I'm sure you've heard this before, Eastern versus Strasbourg. We hear it over and over and over again in real estate. It's a clear, this is the case that said a licensee in California must disclose to a buyer those facts which could have been known about a property if reasonable due diligence had been exercised. So again, you can't put your head in the sand and say, well, I didn't know any of this. You have to use reasonable due diligence to discover things, okay? To not conduct a reasonably competent and diligent visual inspection of the property being offered for sale would be negligence and would be a failure to disclose facts deemed material. So this is your avid, that is your, as a licensee, that is what your requirement is. So if you see something and you don't put it on your avid, that's a failure to disclose, because you represent the seller and the seller doesn't want all this stuff on the avid. Sorry, this is your disclosure. You're saying when I went into the master bedroom, the only thing I saw was scratches because that's all I put. I didn't notice that there was a hole in the wall or that the floor had a hole or, that the window was broken. You would be in trouble for that because you have a duty to disclose what you can see visually. Okay. Okay, any licensee that discloses material facts, any licensee that fails to disclose material facts will do so based upon conduct that is considered fraudulent. You can't not disclose material facts. Okay. It does not matter whether the withholding of a material fact was intentional or non-intentional. Okay, so it doesn't matter if you forgot, non-intentional. I was going to disclose that. I forgot. I was going to put that on my avid when I got back to the office, but I forgot. Okay, so you got to be careful. Okay, that's non-disclosure. Conflict of interest, we know what that is. It's confidential. Okay, a fiduciary duty of loyalty requires licensees to avoid situations that could lead to conflicts of interest. Okay. Confidential information gained from a principal cannot be disclosed. Okay. A seller's licensee cannot disclose the financial condition of a seller's willingness to take a lesser price, a seller's desperation to sell. This was on the test, on either the quiz or the test somewhere. The confidential information, they can't disclose financial information, willingness to take a lesser price, a seller's desperation to sell, okay, unless authorized or anything within those lines. So I'm not sure what the question was, but it gave you some choices of things that gained from a principal. What kinds of things you couldn't disclose. These three things. Okay. Licensees must disclose their interest in a property that is for sale. We know that they'd have to disclose their interest, or if they have if they're related to someone who is buying it. Undisclosed delay on account of an adverse party without the principal's knowledge. A divided agency, also known as an undisclosed dual agency, where licensees act on account of an adverse party without the principal's knowledge. Okay, that's if you're representing both sides. Yeah, they both have to know. You cannot do that without them both knowing. That is prohibited. Competing with a principal for a licensee's account or for another in matters relating to the subject of the agency is prohibited. For a licensee's account.
Hey, Cindy.
Yes.
Yeah, when we are representing the seller and we're going into escrow and we telling the people that we're going to use the seller services, since we're using Premier services, do we need to disclose that our broker has interest on the
we do.
escrow?
And your TC knows we have something called an affiliated business disclosure that we send if you're using our escrow.
But that doesn't go. Okay, it doesn't go in the counter offer though.
No, the buyer and seller sign it after. Probably should. It probably should, right? Before you go into escrow. But we normally get them signed after as part of the TC does it, right? Okay, so this last one, and we just got sued for this. Where a licensee takes an underpriced listing and then purchases the listing themselves. You can't do that. Okay, if you're going to purchase the listing, you better make sure that you better make sure that I know about it and that we have protected ourselves so that with the seller, so that the seller can't come back and say they were taken advantage of. So I have a seller now doing something that I would never tell a seller to do with one of our agents, but I drafted a declaration. The seller, you understand this, you understand this, you understand that, you want to do this anyway? Okay, and they signed it, so yes, but be very careful about this. If you're going to buy a property from where you have the listing, I need to know about it. We need to make sure we're protected. Okay, that's section 2. Let me just go through my little section 2 quizzes with you, although I can see we're going to run out of time. Okay, you are about to take a listing for a house that you would love to own. If you plan on making an offer on the house, what must you do? Make an offer using a corporate entity in order to hide your personal identity? Really, you don't have to know much to know that can't possibly be right, right? Prepare a CMA and exclude the 5 highest sold comparables. Okay, again, you don't have to know a whole lot to know that you're not going to do that. Convince your client to list the property for less than it is worth so that you can buy it at a discount. Again, we're not, those are 3, as far as I'm concerned, those look like 3 very obvious answers that can't be true. The true one, disclose to your client that you are interested in purchasing the home. Ha, how about that? Just tell the client, I'm interested in this. Okay, when fiduciary duty requires the agent to place the interests of the principal above all others, well, which fiduciary duty requires the agent to place the interests of the principal above all others, including the agent's own interest? The duty of material facts? Does that sound like one that would require you to put their interest ahead of yours? No. The duty of accountability? No. Again. Duty of disclosure? No. Duty of loyalty? Okay. So we have a duty of loyalty to our client, and that's what makes us put their interests above ours. Duty of loyalty. Keep that in mind. What is the definition of a material fact? A fact is material if the offering party would not have entered into the contract or would have contracted for less had the facts been known. I'm not going to read the other 3. We just went over this, right? Everyone gets that. That is the answer. The definition of a material fact is a fact that they would not, if they knew, they wouldn't have entered into the contract, or they would have done it for less money, or, you know, a repair or whatever. Okay, so I think you know that one. I'm not going to read the other ones to save a little time. What information can a listing broker give to a buyer broker without obtaining authorization from the seller? Okay, and we went through that. We went through, remember the list of what you can't give. An offer of $40,000 less than the asking price will be accepted by the seller. Can they say that? No, we just saw that. You can't tell them what their lowest price is. The seller is moving overseas and needs to sell. No, you're not allowed to give them any information about the seller's motivation for selling. Okay. The foundation has a small crack, but the seller has a structural report indicating the foundation is sound. Okay. You think you can give out that information? Of course you can, because that's a disclosure and you have to give it out. And the last one that you're not going to choose is your client is very wealthy and doesn't need to sell. No, we're not going to say that. We're not going to give them any motivation or anything about our client's money situation. So that should be one that you could pick out pretty easily. Okay, last one. One form of misrepresentation is knowingly making a blank upon which another may rely to their detriment. Is knowingly making a material fact? I don't think so. That's not a misrepresentation. Knowingly making a disclosure? No. Knowingly making a false statement? Or knowingly making a conflict of interest? Clearly, if you read the choices, right, the only one it could be is knowingly making a false statement to be a form of misrepresentation. So I find the quizzes to have some kind of goofy answers that you could tell that you could throw out right away. But anyway, that's chapter 2. And I didn't get very far in how you guys going to do this. Okay, let's do segment 3 really quickly. Okay, so now we're talking about client prohibited conduct with respect to clients and customers. And remember, we know what the definition of the difference is. Let's go over the questions and see if you can answer them really quickly. Which of the following is not considered, everybody, I'm just going to read these and you guys figure out what your answer is and then we'll go over the right one. Which of the following is not considered a conflict of interest? Representing a buyer and seller in the same transaction without disclosure. As a licensee, that's one. Number two, as a licensee selling a represented buyer a property after disclosing the property is owned by the licensee's uncle. Number three, a buyer's agent purchasing a home for personal use that fits the criteria of a buyer client without showing the buyer client the home first. Okay, so the buyer's agent purchases it without showing it to their client first. So then it can be, okay. Or accepting a referral fee for referring a client to a specific mortgage broker. Okay, so which of those is not a conflict of interest? I'm pretty sure you all could pick out number two, yes? As a licensee selling a represented buyer a property after disclosing the property is owned by the licensee's uncle, right? Okay, so we're not going to represent, it would be a conflict of interest to not tell them that you're representing both the buyer and the seller. It would be a conflict of interest to purchase it for your own personal use without showing it to your buyer first, who is also interested. It would be a conflict of interest to accept a referral fee from a mortgage broker. You can't do that. That's RESPA. So anyway, you should be able to get that one. The buyer has found a house that he wants to make an offer on. Oh, there must be more to this because I see names now. What is Jeff's ethical responsibility when preparing and submitting the offer? Okay, a buyer has found a house that he wants to make an offer on. So I don't know who Jeff is. Jeff's buyer. Jeff is the agent. What is Jeff's ethical responsibility when preparing and submitting the offer? Jeff's buyer must have financing in place before submitting an offer to purchase. Jeff should tell his buyer that the bankruptcy is not an issue as it occurred more than 3 years ago. Jeff must disclose that his buyer has not been pre-approved for a loan, or Jeff has to protect the buyer's confidential financial information at all costs. Okay, so this is when he wants to make an offer. So the buyer found a house he wants to make an offer on. What does the agent have to submit? And they have to tell him that Jeff must disclose that his buyer has not been pre-approved for a loan. When you're making an offer, it asks on there if they've been pre-approved. You have to tell the truth and you have to tell them that. You can't misrepresent the qualifications of a buyer. Okay. Mary is moving from ABC Realty to Bayshore Realty. Mr. and Mrs. Jones have called Mary to come to their home this evening to execute a listing contract. Okay, so right now she works for ABC. She's moving next week to Bayshore. Okay, Mary should take the listing as scheduled, but put the name of Bayshore as the listing broker. No, we can't do that. That's a misrepresentation. Should tell Mr. and Mrs. Jones that she is changing brokerages and ask them to wait until next week so she can keep them as clients. Also unethical because you have a duty to your broker. Should tell Mr. and Mrs. Jones that she is unavailable until the end of next week and write the listing under Bayshore Realty next week. Again, misrepresentation, right? Those are all misrepresentations. Fourth choice, should keep the appointment and write the listing under ABC Realty. Ethically, so you know, ethically, that is what she has to do. Okay, which of the following is not unethical according to the Code of Ethics? Only showing properties to a buyer that has a commission split acceptable to the license? No, that would be unethical. Altering a transaction document? Unethical. Presenting competing offers in a predetermined sequence in an attempt to induce the seller to accept a specific offer? Unethical. Choice 4, after an offer has been accepted, continuing to present offers to the seller until the closing date, which you have a duty to do. So that is not unethical. Okay, last one. Which of the following is not considered to be confidential and must be disclosed to the buyer as a material fact? That the property being sold has a roof leak which has been repaired. Okay, it's not considered to be confidential and must be disclosed. That the seller has credit problems and has to sell to avoid foreclosure, that the seller is selling because of an impending divorce, that the seller is willing to accept 50,000 less than the listed price. Again, those last three, clearly we can't disclose those. Those are about the seller's finances and their motivation, and we don't disclose those. But sure, we can tell them that the property being sold has a roof leak which been repaired. I feel like we had that question already. So we can't do all of section 3 and 4 and 5. Oh yeah. So I'm just going to go over the quizzes with you, and then you're going to have to kind of read those sections. I'm sorry, I talk too much. Okay. Section 4 is duty to the public. Your duty to the public, not to your client, but to the public. Question 1, what information about a neighborhood can you voluntarily give to a client? Ethnic information about the residents? No. The racial composition of the neighborhood homeowners? No. Information about the religious demographics of the area? No. The age and income distributions in the neighborhood? Yes. Okay, so even though age is a protected class, you can give age and income distributions of your neighborhood. This is, and you'll see, I mean, that's obviously, you know that because you can get that information. This is the mean income of each house. This is, you know, age and income. So anyway, if you have that information, you are allowed to give that out, but not anything about the ethnic nature or race or religion or any of that. You have accepted a new listing for a vacation property that is 2 miles away from a scenic lake. What is the best way to advertise this property? This is advertising. Okay, state that your listing is located within walking distance of the lake. 2 miles. No, that sounds misleading to me. Use a photograph of a lakeshore property of a similar architectural style as your listing. Okay, no, clearly you can't do that. That would be false advertising. Advertise the lake itself, since the recreational lake is the real selling point and not the property. Well, clearly we're not advertising the lake and not the property. Last one, describe your listing as accurate as possible and mention the distance from the lake. Gee, could anyone not put that answer, right? So that's it. Describe the listing. It's 2 miles from a lake, you know, from a beautiful lake, or however you want to describe it, but you've got to tell the truth. Okay, Sally is building a website to advertise her residential listing. Which of the following would be appropriate website address she could register? Okay, and let me tell you that your website address can also not be misleading. Okay, so if you're an agent, you can't have a website address that is, you know, broker, Orange County broker. You're not a broker. You can't use that. You have to put something that is accurate even for your website address. Okay, so Sally's building a website. Which of the following would be appropriate? SallyFamilyPhotos.com, Realtor.com, SallySellsSkyscrapers.com, or BuyHomesFromSally.com. So clearly, BuyHomesFromSally.com. That's what she's doing. She's selling homes. She can use that one. She can't put skyscrapers because she's not selling skyscrapers. And if she calls it Realtor.com, we don't know what that is. She's, you know, so please, that's one of the things you have to know, is that your website address has to have a title that actually makes sense. It can't just be anything. Okay, when making a listing presentation to Gil Banks, a real estate agent, Jeff starts to discuss the options for making the home available for viewing by prospective buyers. Gil states, I'm glad you brought that up, Jeff. I don't want a lockbox on my property because I won't have any control over who comes into my home. I want to make sure that no immigrants buy my house or even get inside. What should I do? What should Jeff do? What should the realtor do? Okay, should they include no immigrants in the information in the MLS and all advertising? Clearly, I don't think, hopefully none of you think that's right. Suggest that listing agent to a company be added to the showing instructions so that Jeff can determine and advise Gil if the prospective buyer who makes an offer is an immigrant. No, again, that's whatever that's called. That's not called immigration status, but it's called whatever country of origin or whatever, is not, you can't do that. You cannot point out who's an immigrant and who isn't. Tell Gil to put contact owner as the method of access and advise Gil to ask the name of the potential buyer when called as a means of determining if he wants to grant access for showing. No. So all three of those feed into Gil's desire not to show his property to an immigrant. The right answer is explain to Gil that it is against federal and state law to discriminate or attempt to discriminate against any individual because of their nationality or ethnic background.
Cindy, what about illegal immigrants? Because I had some people and a lender in the early 90s falsify loan documents and everything, and my poor seller was waiting weeks. They took off, and then they came back and they falsified the loan docs because they weren't legal. They
Right.
had no proof. You know, what do you do there?
It's the law is you can't discriminate based on nationality or ethnic background. If someone's maybe illegal to be here, maybe that would make a difference. But again, I don't know how you're going to know that till we get around to doing the social security numbers, and they might not have a social security number. But other than that, no, that doesn't matter. You can't do it. We are not going to discriminate against anybody. Okay, last one on this one, using phrases like free TV shows, celebrity gossip, and download software in multiple locations on your real estate website may be considered as website domains? No. Popularity voting? No. Prizes and services? Maybe, but there have to be more to that. Keyword spamming. I had to look that up. I never heard of keyword spamming, but that's actually a thing. So if you put keywords on your website just to get people's attention, even though they have nothing to do with what you're doing, that's called keyword spamming, and you can't do that. You guys probably already knew that, but I never heard that before.
Cindy.
Yes.
Yeah, and going back to the before, the seller can say, I don't want any unqualified person coming to my house without being approved.
Unqualified financially, yes.
Okay.
Yes. You may not show the house to anyone who you haven't seen, that they have the down payment and they have a letter from a lender saying that they've been approved. Yes. Otherwise, they can't see the house. That is okay, because that is a proper reason to reject a buyer, because their finances don't add up. So yes. Okay. Is there one more? Oh yeah. Okay. Last one, chapter 5. Okay, chapter 5 is duties from realtor to realtor. Okay, what method of dispute resolution is encouraged by the National Association of Realtors? Okay, you might not know that. So the choices are litigation, which is going to court, conciliation, which I guess I'm not sure what they mean by that, jury trial, which is litigation, and the last one is arbitration and mediation. So those are the preferred choices by NAR, arbitration and mediation. Should be mediation first and then arbitration, but okay. A marketing newsletter sent to all homes in a specific neighborhood, which includes 5 listed homes is. So I sent this marketing newsletter to everyone in this area saying these 5 properties have been listed. Okay. Is it an unethical marketing tactic? Is it illegal in some postal areas? Is it only allowed if the 5 properties don't receive the newsletter, or is it permitted? Okay, so clearly it's permitted when you get those 4 choices, right? It's not unethical to do a neighborhood market report. It's not unethical. Where are we here? An unethical marketing. It's not an unethical marketing tactic because you can do a neighborhood report. Illegal in some postal areas. I mean, what does that mean? Only allowed if the 5 properties don't receive the newsletter. Hopefully you could read that one and know that that is not the rule. So yes, you can do a marketing newsletter in a neighborhood regarding houses that are for sale in that neighborhood. You have to, it doesn't say it here, but you have to give proper credit to the listing agent and all that, but you can do that. Licensee Edgar has an active listing with seller Joe, and licensee Sabine wants the listing when it expires if no sale has occurred. So I see you have a listing, but if you can't sell it during your listing period, I want to take a listing. What can Sabine do if Edgar refuses to give the expiration date of the listing contract? So I call Edgar and I say, Edgar, when does your contract expire? And Edgar says either pound sand or just ignores me. Okay. So what can I do if he refuses? Okay, number one, there is nothing I can do. Number two, report Edgar's ethical conduct violation to the Board of Realtors. No, what is, he hasn't done anything, well, okay, he didn't tell you. Buy the property listing from Edgar, or Sabine can contact the seller directly to ask about the contract expiration date. So yes, if you call the listing, if they say you're, well, most of the time, this is not how it happens. It happens that we talk to the buyer first or the seller first. But if you talk to, if you want to take a listing on a property and it's listed and you want to know when it expires, you are allowed to call the broker or the agent, ask them when it expires. If they won't tell you, you are allowed to call the client. By the way, I have somebody who's interested in your property that might be interested, you know, when your listing expires, you know, and do you know when your listing expires? And mostly they say no, I have no idea, I can't find my agreement, but yeah. Okay. Okay, which of the following is ethical conduct for realtors regarding their relationship with other realtors? Which one is ethical? Soliciting the client of another licensee at a cocktail party. Obviously, we all know, right, that is not ethical. Sharing ugly rumors about competitors in the name of protecting unsuspecting homeowners. Ugly rumors, okay, not stuff you know is a fact, but a rumor. No, you can't pass on rumors. No matter how many times you've heard something, if you don't know it is a fact, you are not about another agent. You can't pass it on, okay? So if there's a question that says that, you know, that you've been told by 4 other realtors that this agent is, you know, slow, never returns calls, never does anything. And so you're passing that on to other people. Hey, I heard this agent is slow. You cannot do that. If you have an experience, you could tell them from your experience, but you can't pass on rumors. And those are just, or you know, you don't know if they're true or not. Okay, I know that's a question somewhere. Okay, non-existing relationship. Okay, which of the following ethical conduct for realtors regarding their relationship with other realtors? Okay, that was the ugly rumors. Making a buyer client require a greater commission from the listing agent on your behalf as a contingency to purchase. Okay, can't do that. First of all, buyer client can't require a greater commission. Only, you know, they don't have any right to do that. You cannot negotiate commission in a document signed by a buyer and a seller. And we get them all the time. We get addendums that say this broker or that broker will be crediting the buyer or the seller. Can't do that. The buyer and seller can't agree to take my commission. If my signature is not on the bottom, it's not, you can't do that. Okay. Okay, last one, checking to make sure a prospect is not in an existing agency relationship with another realtor. Gosh, which of the following is ethical conduct? That's it. Making sure the prospect is not in an existing ethical relationship. Okay, while touring a property, Colby is asked by her buyer if she knows anything about the rumor that this is the question, that the listing agent, Marsha Brown, is impossible to do business with. Colby has never had a transaction with Marsha, but has heard from those who have that she is arrogant and difficult to work with. Colby should tell the buyer, I take the 5th. No, that's implying, right? I have heard that Marsha is arrogant and difficult to work with. No, that's a rumor that you're passing on. You don't know if it's true. You don't want to pass it on. I really don't know anything specific, but I do know she has a bad reputation for being difficult. Again, by rumor, I know that. I am not going to pass that on. The last one, I really don't know anything negative about Marsha as I've never had a transaction with her. How about that? That's what we are supposed to say. Okay, we are not supposed to imply anything bad about someone. But again, if I had a transaction with Marsha and it was bad, I might want to say that. Then I might want to say, hey, I had a transaction with her. I don't know what other people think, but this is what my experience is. That's different. That is not a rumor. That is my experience. Okay, so we don't pass on bad stuff. And that is, I'm sorry I didn't get to do all the ethics of 3, 4, and 5. So I suggest those of you who are on here that you take your test, that you go through this and do it either today or tomorrow while it's fresh in your mind. What we will do is, for those of you who don't do that and it gets unfresh, this requirement has to be done by December 31st. So we'll probably do this again in mid-December for those who waited till the last minute. But you know how December goes and people get busy and there's holidays and all that. So I don't suggest that you wait till the last minute, but if you do, and we'll probably do this again. So anyway, that's as much as I could do in an hour. I'm so sorry. And go take your test, get it over with. Let's get this done.
Where do we go to take the test?
Well, you can, the one that gives this booklet that I've been using is CAR. CAR has a free test.
Okay.
You just in, in the search button, put in NAR ethics, and it will take you. Then there'll be a box that says, take your free one.
Cindy, where do we get this booklet?
It's on there. Then when you go to take the class and you sign in, you'll see that's what they give you. They give you the booklet, and then.
Oh yeah, and Robert posted it.
I
just saw that.
See if he could post it. Yeah, that's the booklet. The class. But you can. This class is supposed to be 2.5 hours. The 5 quizzes don't take 2.5 hours.
It's actually 4 hours. I've signed up for the class for tomorrow from 1 to 4 with the Board of Real Estate.
That's
with
3.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, 3 hours.
Yeah, it's a 3-hour class, and they won't let you take the final until the time has passed. So after I finished the 5 quizzes, I had to wait like an hour and a half to take the final.
So if we wanted to go online, like you said, could we avoid the class and just go online, or do we have to sign up?
There is no class. It's just, here's the materials, and then you take the quizzes whenever you want, and then you have to wait a certain amount of time to take the final.
Got it.
There is no teaching class. There's just a booklet. So yeah, you can go in and you can say, I'm ready for quiz 1 right away. And because number 1, you can take the quizzes over and over. Number 2, they're not timed. So if you get a question you don't know the answer to,
yeah, it's either one or the other, because Andrea, some boards are offering the classes. Like if you didn't want
orally.
Yeah, that's what I have. It's an online class.
Yeah, mine does as well.
Yeah, okay. And then you can take an ethics class, but bottom line is you don't have to actually take a class. You just have to go on and pass the test.
Okay.
Cindy, so what you did today, it was just like a review?
Yeah, it's the review. It's the booklet they're going to give you and ask the questions from. So yeah, I was hoping to get through the whole thing, and I think we only got through 2 of them or 3. And so yeah, so you might not, but hopefully you just hearing it, when you see the question, you'll go, oh yeah. But again, with the quizzes you saw, I feel like 3 of the questions usually on a quiz were 3 of the questions were just kind of crazy, like what's ethical, and they'll give you 3 completely unethical things. So yeah, look at your questions and make sure that you can't rule out 3 answers right away, because sometimes you can. I know I missed one. I can't remember which one I missed. So you might have one wrong answer somewhere. I missed one somewhere. You can miss one on the quiz and still pass. You have to have 80%. So okay, so go out there and claim your free ethics course. And
thank you, Cindy.
Questions, let me know.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have to stop sharing. I have to do this. How do I do that up here?
You're the best, Cindy.
Oh my gosh, I thought I would get through the whole thing. I thought I would talk faster. Okay, and hopefully what I liked about it was it has a lot of good material. And I feel like you really do have your ethics for a whole 3 years. Okay, thanks guys. I got a lot of calls to return. Bye.
Woohoo! Thank you.
Yay, Cindy. All right, good job, good job, good job, good job. All right, we have a whole